right, so first I just want to say thank you so much, guys, for coming. I'm so excited to chat with you today. I'm a New York native. New York has a special place in my heart, and these truly are the gold star creators when it comes to covering every inch of the city. For those of you who don't know, Newsbreak was founded in 2015 and is now the country's leading local news app. And before I kind of tell you a little bit more about Newsbreak, I just want to let you know that we try to connect communities with vital information and news, and we do this in a few different ways. One is with our relationships with our established publishers, and the other is with our content creator program that these guys are a part of. And before we launch into it, I want to introduce you to my colleague, Ronnie, who is super instrumental in helping me organize this event, and I'm eternally grateful for her. So Ronnie leads the content programming team here at Newsbreak, and she handles everything from breaking news to top national headlines. She has a background in multimedia and broadcast journalism. And not only is she an expert in content design and is always curating and highlighting the best content Newsbreak has to offer, but she's always ready to step in and do additional reporting where it's needed. Recently, she covered the tragic Monterey Park shooting that occurred earlier this year, capturing moving and impactful video from a vigil held for the victims, as well as the 2022 midterm elections. She's a true storyteller with an eye for the stories that matter. Prior to Newsbreak, she worked as an on-air reporter at Phoenix TV and as a video production assistant at the United Nations. She's also a proud alum of Columbia Journalism School. Outside of work, you can find her dancing, snowboarding, and playing tennis.
Well, thank you for the great intro. I really love that. And thank you guys for being here. I just landed in the city literally a couple days ago, and I was like, there's so much to do in New York. So many things happening at the same time. You guys can do anything right now. You guys could be anywhere right now, but you're here with me, so I'm so grateful. And before I start, I also want everyone to give a round of applause to Gwen. She put so much effort, love, and heart into this event, literally including carrying these chairs up here 3 at a time. So thank you so much. Without you, this wouldn't have happened at all. So a little bit about Gwen before I start also. She's a senior content program manager here at Newsbreak, where she works to connect local content creators like you guys and journalists to our audiences. So very important work that she's doing. Previously, Gwen worked for Twitter on the curation team, and she used to be a senior reporter and editor for news outlets like NBC News and The Insider. So really well known. Gwen actually holds degrees from Northwestern and Columbia Journalism School. I know there are a lot of alums here tonight, so go Lion. She actually grew up here in New York. She's a Brooklyn native, so really knows everywhere in the city, knows her way around. If you have any questions about places to eat, bookstores to go to, she will be the best person to go to, along with our panelists. And in her free time, she loves trying local restaurants, as I said, and bookstores. And she loves taking her labradoodle, Paloma, and works around the city.
Paloma and Hudson need a play date.
Yes.
You would love her.
Thank you so much, Ronnie, for the intro. As Ronnie said, I love the city I call home, which is a big part of the reason why I'm so excited to introduce you to our amazing NYC area content creators and talk more in depth about covering this great city. So, just some background information. There aren't a lot of local newspapers left. I'm pretty sure you know this because you don't spend your mornings parsing through the paper, right? You go to your phone and that's how you find your information, right? In the last 4 years, more than 360 newspapers have closed, and in most of these places there are no replacements. So that means an estimated 70 million people are without a local news source in their area. And even in places with newspapers, these newspapers are getting cut left and right, so these staff members are getting cut, the coverage is getting cut, and that's leaving a lot of people without access to essential news. Which leads us to the big question that so many people are trying to work on and trying to understand. How do we build a sustainable local news framework so that people can be informed about what's going on in their communities, connect with their neighbors, and lead better lives? Newsbreak believes that one of the ways we can do this is by empowering local content creators to share the stories that matter the most to their audiences. Our content creator program boosts hundreds of creators from all across the country, and tonight we want to introduce you to some of our very best from New York City. We're going to have a panel discussion about their process, tips, and tricks, and how they've helped fill the void left by vanishing traditional news publishers, followed by a Q&A where we'll take questions from live and virtual audiences. Then we'll have some time to connect and network over food and drinks in the next room. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Ed Garcia Conde, the founder of Welcome to the Bronx, the borough's largest independent news site and blog. Ed is incredibly impressive. I have spent the last few days reading his stories, and he covers every inch of this borough. He's determined to provide accessible information to people living in the Bronx. He's also determined to dispel these negative stereotypes that are super limiting, and just broaden people's minds about different areas of the city. He covers everything from the city's housing crisis to covering recent dolphin sightings in the Bronx River, believe it or not. He is incredibly accomplished. In 2015, Ed and Welcome to the Bronx were recognized by New York City's Historic District Council as a friend in the media for their writings. And in 2016, he was honored by then New York City Council Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito for his activism within the LGBTQ community. Since 2017, Columbia University Libraries has been archiving Welcome to the Bronx in order to preserve the website for future scholarly research. In his spare time, Ed can be found riding his bicycle across the Bronx and New York City, documenting his beloved hometown. Let's give it up for Ed.
It's pretty impressive. I don't know if I followed that up.
And I want to bike around the city too. You know, show me the path.
Yeah, we'll do a bike date.
Well, we also have here our star contributor, content creator, Kels Acosta. Kels is a video content creator based here in New York City. He shares some of the best food to eat and places to visit, to explore in New York City and beyond. He created a lot of really memorable content by immersing himself in different cultures. And through your lens, we're able to see cultures through food. So I saw Chinese Peruvian fusion food, Korean street food, and there's Caribbean comfort meals, everything French toast, everything you can think of. He's tried it. So also a really great person to go to if you want food recommendations. And he also took us with him through other adventures such as zip lining through the Grand Canyon, which now is on my bucket list, by the way. It looks amazing. Yeah, his videos are very engaging and they're very genuine, earning him a very big number of followers, and they're still growing. Give it up to
And next we have Carla and James Murray. Carla's over here, James over here. Carla's usually the one on camera, and James is usually the one documenting, and we're gonna learn more about their process tonight. I'm super excited to get into that. But one of the things I love about this panel is everyone represents different aspects of the city, different areas of coverage, and Carla and James really take the cake when it comes to covering mom and pop businesses and small businesses in New York. They realized that, there were so many of these local businesses closing down, and they were, upset about it, right? Because these businesses anchor the city. And they wanted to document these businesses and the outsized role that they play in the city. And so they've been doing that for more than 25 years at this point. There are so many different ways in which they've been recognized, so many different awards. They're actually award-winning authors. They've written many different books, storefronts, and bear with me as I find my actual bio. Thank you very much. So I want to name the books that they've written because it's actually incredible. You can see that they've been covering this with so much force for years and years and years. So their critically acclaimed books include Storefront, The Disappearing Face of New York Nights, Storefront 2, A History Preserved, and Broken Windows Graffiti NYC. New York Nights was the winner of the prestigious New York Society's Library 2012 New York City Award. Their photography has appeared in many different outlets, including the New York Times, New York Post, New York Magazine, and the New Yorker. You see a little New York theme there, right? James and Carla were awarded the 2015 Regina Kellerman Award by the Greenwich Village Society for Historic Preservation in recognition of their significant contribution to the quality of life in Greenwich Village, the East Village, and NoHo. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give it up for James.
Thank you guys for being here. I'll kick off the discussion, and then after I'll open up questions to the floor so we can take some questions from you guys and our audiences from our live stream. So the first question actually is just for everyone. Maybe we can go from Ed to Carla. I wonder, what's your path to journalism? What led you to pursue, journalism, especially local content? And what's your history with Newsbreak?
So it goes back to 2009. I started, I had found myself with a lot of free time all of a sudden.
And I decided to start documenting my neighborhood. One of the reasons was because every time I would go into Google, everything that I would find in the Bronx was the Bronx of the 1970s and the 1980s, the South Bronx, everything that was, like all the negative stereotypes that we were bombarded with media. And meanwhile, that's not the reality of the Bronx 30 years later when I was, looking at the internet. So I took it upon myself to start telling the stories of the rebirth that was going on, the real story of what actually was happening, and not just the crime that mainstream media was always focusing on. And that started in September of 2009, and within a month, it sort of started like snowballing into a bigger and bigger project. It grew its own legs. It went from a hobby to a full-time job in a couple of months, and the rest was sort of history. It just evolved into what it is today.
So impressive.
It's pretty cool, it's pretty cool. For myself, I would say initially I was working for Madison Square Garden for the Knicks and the Rangers for about 8-9 seasons, and then the pandemic kind of hit. I was making travel content previous to that, and because the pandemic hit and my audience was really taking to travel content, as you guys know, you couldn't travel anymore. So then I challenged myself to make different content, to try different things. And when the pandemic first started, I started a series called Corona TV NYC. So for 15 weeks, I went to different neighborhoods in New York City and interviewed people on the street at the height of Corona, just talking about their support systems, how they're doing with money, what's life been like for them since it started, and really just getting a pulse of New York City, speaking to doctors and people that were nurses and people that were affected by the situation. It was really powerful. So at that point in time, I was like, you know what, I gotta create more, So I made like a pizza video, and then my audience, my audience and my friends were like, bro, this is really good. So coming out of high school, I used to edit, but I gave it up for like 17 years. So I was like, you know what, editing and acting was my thing. Let me brush off my skills, and I put them together and started creating more food reviews. And then I started traveling the world more, obviously, after the pandemic. And then my channel just kind of took off. And then from that point on, I've just been creating valuable content. That's my goal, is to create valuable content. And I've been with Newsbreak for like 2 years now.
Yeah.
Right. So it's love. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for coming here today. I'm honored, for sure.
Thank you.
I guess you could say our journey is a different path, just because we started not as videographers but as photographers. As Gwen was introducing us, our passion for documenting small mom and pop businesses really began in, I would say the late 1990s. And I'm born and raised New Yorker. I grew up in the Bronx, and Kingsbridge. And it really honestly wasn't the changes that I saw in my neighborhood, because I had moved out of, by the time I had met my husband James, I had moved out of the Bronx. I was living on the Lower East Side, actually. That's where James and I met. And so much has changed. Growing up in the 1970s in the Bronx, as you already stated, there's so many negative stereotypes about, when I tell people, I grew up in the Bronx, they're like, oh, you poor thing, like it must have been so hard on you. But you don't think that as a kid. There were troubles and everything like that, but it was like my neighborhood, and everyone got along, and you didn't think about the struggles and everything like that. It was just like you just did your thing, and you had your day, and you had fun with whatever was around you, whether it was playing stickball in the street, because we did that. It's a true thing, but it was really these mom and pop stores. I always remembered going to the penny candy store as a kid and getting 3 pieces of bubble gum for a penny. That's what the price was. And all those stores, when I went back and visited, when I was trying to show my husband around my neighborhood, they were pretty much all gone. And at the time, James and I were documenting the streets of New York, and we turned our attention to documenting the small mom and pop businesses, because I said something to him it doesn't feel the same anymore from when, I grew up. I look around, and it's so different, and things seemed very generic, like it just didn't feel the same anymore, it didn't have the same, I didn't feel like that same connection I did as a child. So we just started taking photos, and this is with 35mm film, because granted, I guess I'm showing my age again, this is before digital cameras, before any of that, and for us, it was always about like the look and feel of the store. Like there's so many stores and there's so many to document, but it had to have a certain look and feel. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. Something about it just spoke to us, whether it was hand-painted signage, a neon sign, the beautiful displays in the storefront windows. These things are all disappearing. Now a store opens up, like, there's stores here in the bottom of the Empire State Building. Do they have attractive window displays? No, it's not even a thing. I mean, the way you went to a store as a kid was you walked the street and you saw it, like it was either the sign or what you saw in the window, and that's what attracted you into it. There was no internet, there was no advertising. Yeah, there was a phone book, that's about it. So we just started documenting these mom and pop businesses because we kind of for us, I wanted to hold on to them, and we weren't sharing the photos with anybody because, like I said, this was before the internet. Our sharing was like, maybe we put some on our wall, and if someone happened to come over, they might see the photo. That was the extent of our sharing our photos, but we amassed a large number of them. I mean, enough that we had to rent a storage unit to store all our negatives. And it just snowballed from there. We also interviewed the owners. That's something that we did from the very, very beginning. It wasn't only about the photo. Even though we're photographers, it was very important for us to interview the store owner. And this, again, not with a video camera. This was done with a micro cassette recorder, like these small, I mean, I don't know if you guys, some of you might be so young, you're like, you don't even know what she's talking about. It's like the rotary phone. There's these like tiny little micro cassettes, and you used to record like the conversations. I mean, we even had a regular size cassette one at one point too. But we would find out all these interesting tidbits. Like I would go in and be like, well, why is this store open and why did this store close? So I wanted to kind of find out, and we would ask them, and they had such interesting stories to share with us about like the joys and struggles of owning a mom and pop store that we said, oh, we just have to keep on doing this. And I guess that's, to make a long story short, the genesis of how we got interested in documenting. The videography came later because we just felt like we weren't reaching a large enough audience with our photographs, with just our photography alone. We created a lot of books. We have like 9 different books on the subject. But the books, not everybody reads a book. The books are in the New York Public Library, but not everybody even knows that, or maybe they don't have a library card, or they can't afford to buy a book. But now, with the internet, video content reaches everybody, so we felt very strongly that we had to step it up to the next level and create video as well.
I love that. I love this story. Yeah.
Years later, and here we are, right?
Yeah.
And there it is.
Kels, I want to follow up on something you said. You were mentioning that, originally you did international travel content, COVID happened, then you switched over and, we're focusing more on local food content. And that can be a tough transition, right? Going from international to local, just by virtue of the audience that sometimes you can have access to, right? It's, sometimes people think that having more generic content that reaches a larger audience, and it doesn't necessarily lend to like a great impact, but people are more concerned about numbers and that kind of thing. So, as somebody who has made that transition, that I think a lot of content creators want to, and they're maybe, kind of like worried or, scared to take that leap to go truly local. What kind of advice do you have for those content creators? Tell us a little bit more about how maybe you navigated any of those challenges making that switch.
For sure, I'd say one of the biggest challenges about switching over from national news to local news is going to be competition, right? Because now you're talking about social media. We all live in social media now. Social media, let's say content is consumed differently for people. Some may be short form, some may be long form. The reason why I create longer form content is because I have a passion in video editing and I like seeing full-on productions. Whereas I don't mind going on social media and seeing short snips, 30 seconds, 45 seconds, which are all helpful and valuable. But like she said, when someone has a story to tell, it's virtually impossible to squeeze it into a minute, right? So when you're providing valuable content, helping other mom and pop places or other small places that need that voice, it kind of goes into like a 3, 5, 7 minute. And I would say that Newsbreak has been so instrumental in being able to share these stories because, you know, other platforms is just, it lives in the Xander zone. You just put it out there and you never know what's gonna happen. But Newsbreak is concentrated on local news specifically. And I can't tell you how many people I've met off the street that are like, you're from Newsbreak. And I'm like, okay, that's what's up. So I would say the biggest challenge is probably competition because you're dealing with people who make all different types of content, who may be making 30-second TikTok content, maybe 45-second, you know, any other Instagram content. But when I say one way to navigate through that is being flexible with your approach, right? Taking something and being eclectic with it, but also having a sense of being authentic, right? And then when you mix those two, you start creating your own style and people start recognizing, okay, that's Kel's, you know, that's Kel's videos, stuff like that. And my dream growing up as a kid, I always wanted to make movie trailers, right? Because I love watching a movie trailer and just being so enticing, like, oh, watch that movie, you know? You can see people's faces like you're in the theater, like, you know, once the trailer stops, you hear people, I gotta see that, I wanna see that, you know? So having that feeling, I love that feeling.
Yeah.
So creating short form and long form content is valuable in its own. I would say just be flexible with your approach, learn to be eclectic and authentic at the same time.
That's so great. I love how you talk about local stories. I want to turn it over to Ed. Also a question about local story because your stories cover such a variety of topics. It's from affordable housing to lottery winners to Bronx residents running marathon. So I was wondering, why do you think these hyper-local stories are so important? You touched upon maybe, you know, breaking the stereotypes of a certain place, but I wanted you to elaborate on that a bit more and tell us more reasons why these stories are so important to tell.
Probably the most important reason to tell these stories is because people see themselves in news. You know, you get to, the community can see themselves. When you're watching, you know, the mainstream media, you're not really seeing, you're seeing more national figures. And I think it provides a sense of community building because, like, for example, the marathon runner, it's a man from the Bronx. He actually has run, I think it was 42 consecutive marathons, one of the highest numbers in history for New York City. And even during COVID, he did this. And these types of stories are so inspirational for people. Like, you know, like he's 72, I think now, 73. And he started late in life, late 30s, running marathons, and he's still doing these things. So again, like I think there's something really important about like these human interest stories that people can relate to. And it's not just the standard stuff that you're seeing like crime. With the affordable housing, it's something that I'm really passionate about because we have an affordability crisis in New York City that is not being addressed. You know, a lot of developments go up and they're told that they're affordable housing, but they're really not affordable housing.
Yeah.
And I think that people need to be aware of what's going on because how are you going to make change if you don't know what's happening? So.
Yeah, information is power.
Yeah.
Definitely. And how did you find these stories?
So I've always had like a big network of friends and people that I knew, and then as Welcome to the Bronx started growing, I started meeting more and more people. Different organizations would reach out to me, and it sort of just became this vast network where people would just feed me stories like, hey, this is what's going on in this corner of the Bronx. Do you think you can cover it?
Yeah.
And, you know, think about it. You know, if it's something that you want, you know, like that aligns with the content that I, you know, promote. Because I don't do crime.
Yeah.
I don't write about anything because mainstream media does a very good job at that, and I don't think I need to add to that noise, so to speak.
Absolutely. 42 marathons, you said?
42.
Wow, wild. Couldn't be me, but good. You know, let's talk a little bit more about different forms of content production. So I know James and Carla, they do these amazing videos that are really crisp, high quality, and yet, you know, there's a very spontaneous feel to them. It's very much, you know, a lot of their videos, they're documenting something that's unfolding right in front of our eyes. So Carla, this question's for you. How do you do that, honestly? Like, it's very hard when something is happening in real time to get such amazing high quality video. So what advice do you have for content creators who are trying to navigate that and trying to juggle all these different aspects of the content production?
I mean, I think what has helped us is that we started with live streaming through our YouTube channel. So we got very comfortable shooting in not like, live, like, IRL in real life videos. But that's not how we started. We started with recorded videos. And it's definitely a huge difference. Just like people on the panel, Kelsey, you were talking about, your love for editing and everything like that. When we started, our videos were all recorded and we would spend a tremendous amount of time editing. And that's how we divided our work up. James would often, we share the responsibility of taking the videos, but James has always been the editor. Like, I don't really do, I might sit there and I might help him, but he's the one doing all the editing. But there's a big difference, a big divide between shooting IRL and shooting recorded videos. And that's the factor that you just don't know. I mean, you can say, okay, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to, you have some place in mind. Like, I'm just going to, for instance, I'm going to go to Central Park and I'm going to just go to the band shell and I'm going to see what's going on. And maybe you'll be able to shoot a video, maybe something will be happening, maybe not. And that's the thing with live video, you don't know, unless it's an event, like a parade or something like that, which we do cover. I mean, that's like a given that something is gonna happen on that particular day. So the best advice I could say is to just probably maybe have a plan in mind of where you wanna go, but you have to just let it happen, because that's the thing with live video. You can't say, okay, I'm going to make a video today, because you might go out there and there's nothing going on. I mean, it could be, the weather could turn and your idea for your Central Park video is just out the window because it started pouring rain and everybody left. But you just have to adapt, and that could be in a video in itself. Then you say, wow, look how beautiful and empty Central Park is in the rain. So there's your other video. Now, you switch from, something in your mind, okay, I'm going to create this, and you adapt and you create something else. So as much as you like to plan, prepare for the unexpected. James and I like to say that we make it look very simple, but things behind the scenes are much more difficult.
Yeah, prepare for the best, but also be ready for the worst.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right, or hope for the best, but prepare for the worst.
Yes.
That's another way of looking at it.
Yeah, I love that.
Right.
We talked about the local angle. We talked about the medium, which is video or text, and I want to zoom in more into the content, and I have a question for Kels. We talked about it before the panel, like you try so many different kinds of food, and when we eat a dish, we are exposed not just to the food, but to rich history, many stories, deep culture, a lot of things. And how do you usually connect this culture? How do you tap into the culture when you're eating a certain kind of food? And how do you take that culture and apply that, make that beneficial to our local users?
Right. Well, that ties in very well with traveling. My love for traveling. I'm an avid traveler. And being able to know the differences in the cultural beliefs or the customary things that they do, I take that into these places. So if I went into one place and I know a little bit of German and I start speaking German, the guy said, you know German, bro? I'm like, yeah. So I love being a sponge and learning from people to be able to then pay it forward and show other people how you can resonate with a different culture. But that process, I actually love going out and researching different types of places. Some may be trendy, some may be mom and pop places, some may be hidden gems. But through that research, I look for reviews, I look for what people are saying, I look for how I could create more value for them. I look to see if they have any type of social media presence. And sometimes if they don't, then I go a little bit harder. Right? I'll go there and I'll talk to them and I'll say, hey, listen, this is what I do. I'd like to create some content for you. And then they're like, okay, cool, sure. And then I show them my channels and my credentials, and they're like, oh, okay, yeah, cool, let's do it. And then one dish turns into like 14 dishes, right? And I'm eating different things, but I love to talk to the managers and the owners at the same time about their preparation, the reason for preparing this type of food. Like if I go to a halal place, obviously it's a lot more religious affiliation to that. So just saying on camera, the different type of religious affiliations or what it means to have halal food or the process and how it's made, that all boils back to having valuable content, informative content, so it can be engaging and intriguing, but you also want to give some type of gems to people. So from a video, they can take, you know what, I've never heard that before, I've never seen that before, so just providing that value is the best way, for sure.
I love how you're giving social media presence to like these mom and pop shops or little hidden gems that don't have social media presence. I think that's why it's important to do these like local stories for sure.
Yeah, and they're so appreciative for it once you come by. And then sometimes I've created videos for people. Well, I'm on site and I'm making the video, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then I'll have the final production, and they'll call me and they'll reach out to me like, I can't believe that this is what it looks like, So I take pride in that and just being able to help people that need help and that may not be able to afford it,
That's a great answer.
Have you ever tried empanada mama?
Of course.
That's what we're having after the panel, guys.
Yeah. I love it.
So on the subject of food and restaurants, Ed, I know you recently covered a Japanese restaurant, and your story made quite a splash. So can you tell us a little bit about the story and the impact that it had?
Sure. So there was a Japanese restaurant that actually opened yesterday in the Bronx, and I had done a menu tasting last week. And I published the story yesterday morning. It opened up. They were opening at 4 o'clock, and I strolled in with my friend at 8 o'clock, and the owner was like, everybody's been sitting, like, there was a line out the door, like several people waiting to get in before 4 o'clock. And he's like, where did you hear about this? And they just kept saying, welcome to the Bronx, welcome to the Bronx. And he was just, by 8 o'clock, they closed at 11, by 8 o'clock, they had run out of rice for the sushi. And they had not prepared for like the onslaught of people that they were getting. And he was just super appreciative of the exposure that he got. They were, like for a first day for them, it was, they had to close early because they had sold out of everything. And it's like, those type of things that's what I love, like as much like you were saying, like helping out the small businesses and getting the word out. Especially when you become a trusted source for so many years, you write something, people know like, okay, maybe I should take a look. And that's the feedback that I got from people that were there. They just kept telling me like, oh, we saw that you wrote about it, we're doing it. And I love, more than ever now, especially after COVID, small businesses, especially restaurants in New York City, they need all the help that they can get. And if we can do that as content creators, then, let's go for it.
You two are my trusted sources for all things restaurants. Ed, you have covered the Bronx for so long, you know it inside and out. So you recently wrote a story about, things that other people might not know about the Bronx. But I'm curious, in all of your reporting and all of your coverage, what have you learned about the Bronx? What have you been most surprised to find out about your home?
Well, in the process of trying to teach the world that the negative stereotypes that we might know, like that we've been bombarded with, is that I had to unlearn my own biases from the media that had basically brainwashed me just like everyone else. Because growing up in the Bronx in the 70s and 80s and even 90s, the first thing I wanted to do when I graduated from college is run out. That's just the goal that everybody wants to do, is you just leave the Bronx once you're able to. And that's one of the things that I learned, that I didn't have to leave the Bronx for somewhere else. I did. I lived in Manhattan for a year. But writing these stories and getting to know all these organizations that have done amazing work, like the Bronx River Alliance, for example, it's the only freshwater river, the Bronx River, in New York City. And through people power, through the community, they turned one of the most polluted rivers in the country into a river where we have dolphins now, swimming upstream all of a sudden. We have the first beavers in New York City in over 150 years came back. You have fish that are spawning once again in the river. So much wildlife is coming back. And this was done by the average person. It wasn't done by someone with a degree from an Ivy League school in environmental work or biology degrees. It was just people who barely had high school degrees, but they realized that there was something severely wrong with the way their neighborhoods were being dumped upon and disinvested by the government. So I started to learn the resiliency of the people of the Bronx and like how we were able to make something out of nothing. And you know, for me, like that's just invaluable. Like it taught me how to appreciate everything that everybody's been through, especially during like the worst of the years. You know, because when I grew up in the 70s and 80s, but I didn't see it as something bad. You know, I lived in the South Bronx. We had burnt out lots, but we were happy. Like as Carla was mentioning, like that we weren't like aware of that around. So I appreciate that.
Actually, we have a quote from one of your stories that I think pertains to what you're discussing right now.
Definitely, yeah. So if you can give us the quote, that would be great. So we can read it together. Yeah. Yeah, we wanted you to elaborate a bit more about this because that's what we do, right? Journalists, we really contribute to our community.
Yes.
We benefit, we like think of the people when we're doing our work. So I also wanted to kind of open the floor, like have everyone talk about this, like how is your work bringing people together as a community? And maybe we can start with that since the quote is on.
So, as you know, New York City real estate interests, they're very famous for rebranding neighborhoods and changing the history by adding names. That, you know, like for example, Spanish Harlem, like they want to call it Spaha many times. So in the Bronx, they were trying to do that to the South Bronx for Sobro. And when I wrote this, I just let my tongue flow, and I really like just basically giving a lashing to the real estate industry, because there was a really inflammatory event that happened in the South Bronx. You had one of the biggest developers, as a matter of fact, one of the developers owned the Empire State Building. He was one of the owners at the time, the Chishri Group. Multi-billionaires. They came to the South Bronx waterfront, and the background for anybody who doesn't know, the South Bronx is the poorest congressional district in the country, where the median income in our district is barely $27,000 a year. And these billionaire developers came with a plan to rebrand the part of the South Bronx to call it the Piano District, to make it really nice. And they were going to build like luxury towers. And in order to promote these towers that they were going to construct, they had a party, and the theme of it was basically the Bronx is burning. They had garbage cans that were burning, things that we remember from our childhood, to see like garbage cans on fire. They had cars flipped over with bullet holes in them that were rusted. And this was basically my response to, you know, to the developers and all that movement that was happening. And actually, some of it was quoted in the New York Times because of that, because when that party happened, like we were infuriated in the Bronx, you know, especially people who didn't even live in the Bronx anymore.
It's appalling.
Yeah.
It's appalling.
It was just, and right outside the party, you actually had homeless people trying to basically survive, and there were homeless people with garbage cans like on fire because they needed the heat, and inside you had celebrities, A-list celebrities, literally a few feet away from them. And that was one of my responses to the entire, like, it was just appalling of what was happening. And again, it wasn't the mainstream media that brought that to the attention, it was local journalism, it was people like myself and other organizations and other bloggers that were mad. We were the ones that brought this for the mainstream media to actually like act and say, hey, you need to report on this. This is what's happening, this matters to us.
Thank you. Kels and Carla, I'd love to know, you know, more about what you think local journalism's effect on communities is, and you know, how you do that with your work, how you impact the community with your work.
Well, for us, being spearheading the you know, trying to bring into the limelight these small mom and pop businesses, it's been our passion and like, I mean, really a all-consuming thing of ours for like well over 25 years. And to us, these small mom and pop stores, we like to call them mom and pop stores, maybe some of you aren't familiar with the term, but it's because mom and pop used to live above the store. They may not own the building, but it was like they could just run downstairs and be at the store anytime. So that's like what kind of colloquialism for that name. but it really pertains to any small independently owned business. And the government of New York City always says they're pro-small business, but from our interviews with the small business owners, and this is going back through the 1990s when we started interviewing them, that is the furthest thing from the truth, and it hasn't changed from whatever mayor or whatever administration it is in place. It's always about big business, but to us, it's the small stores that make each neighborhood of New York City unique. And each one has their own story to tell. And James and I have spent the better part of our life walking, not taking the subway, but walking every single neighborhood. And I mean walking, I mean, we walked from, we live in the Lower East Side now, in the East Village, to be specific, and we walked to Astoria, Queens. Yeah, we could take the subway, we could get there a lot faster, but when you walk, that's when you see things. And there's been many times that we have said, we have like a particular street in mind, but we get sidetracked, and that's the fun, where the fun begins. It's always finding these little gems, these little hidden away places that maybe nobody ever heard of, but to us are the stars of the neighborhood. And we would find like a whole host of characters hanging out at them, and we learned so much, not only about the store, but about the community, about what these little stores meant to the community. A lot of them, I would call them like ad hoc community centers. If you wanted to find out what was going on in the neighborhood, then go to your local corner bodega, or go to the candy store, and the owner can tell you everyone's name that lives on the block, and who lived there before, their parents, their grandparents, and everything about them, what street to go to, what street not to go to, what time you should be walking around, and everything like that, and God knows what in between. You know, where should you get your hair cut? Ask the candy store owner. And you move into the neighborhood, go talk to your local business owner, because not only supporting a mom and pop shop helps the mom and pop shop, but it also helps the community, because almost 100% of the time, small mom and pop stores hire local people that live in the community to work in their business. They're not recruiting somebody from another country or across the other side, of, like from California, to come man their mom and pop store. Usually it's somebody that just from the neighborhood that they can depend on to open up a store, close the store, be there when they can't be there. But it's just the joys and struggles. It means so much to them. Oftentimes, it's also like a lifeline for many immigrants. Even though both of my parents were born here in New York, if we go back generations, everybody is an immigrant, unless you're, of course, a Native American. Everybody came from somewhere. And these small mom and pop stores, that's the American dream, like to have a store and to be able to support you and your family. And I mean, I don't know, it brings tears to my eyes, the so many struggles, and it just, the joy that we get speaking to the owners and helping promote them, because for us it started with the photography and just taking their photograph, but then creating videos, creating the content. Newsbreak has done a tremendous job with helping, highlight our passion of promoting these small mom and pop businesses, because they're often forgotten about. And even though like there's restaurant awards and things like that, things pop up on social media, sometimes it's the places that get paid to put okay, have this giant opening, but they're paying for people to show up there. But the mom and pop stores, they don't have that. I mean, even just their sign, like they might have just painted themselves because they don't have the money to make their own sign. And we would find out, we would ask them, oh, I love that sign, and then they'd be like, oh yeah, my grandfather, he painted that sign for us. And it just made it all the more special. So yeah, for us, we still document mom and pop stores. We're happy, we're sad when one closes, but we're happy when a new one opens in its place, because to us, New York is always going to change. We're not trying to create a museum and say every mom and pop store should stay just the way it is forever. We're in reality. Reality is New York is always changing. But we're happy when a little store, if it needs to close for whatever reason, at least it gets replaced by another small business, because to us, again, they're the backbones of the community, just like you guys are highlighting too. And I mean, Ed, honestly, we've known each other, we never met in person, but we've known each other for a long, long time through Instagram. That's how we met a long time ago. We saw each other's work and I said, oh wow, we have a lot of Bronx photos. Would you like to share them? And we cross-promoted. Because to us, that's another important thing, when creators can help one another. It's very important because you know, a lot of people, you know, they might want to create, but they don't know where to start, and they don't they're unsure. But we can all help one another. I mean, that to us, that's what it all is about. It's about community and you know, helping each other out.
Right. Those are great points, and to add to that, I would say there's so many benefits of local news. You guys have to think about it. We are in New York City. This is one of the greatest cities in the world, right? And in retrospect, I look at it as if you need to know your city the same way that you know yourself, right? Because it's all about perspective. Everyone has a different perspective. They have different preferences. So your reality of New York might be different than someone else's out there. So knowing your reality gives you an opportunity to then listen to someone else's reality and share that with them. Like you said, like being able to walk the city and see different things. It's kind of like when you shop on Amazon. You go in there, you find something you're looking for, and it's cool. But when you're walking the streets and you're like, I've been looking for that for 3 months and I found it. So if you learn your city by navigating the streets, talking to people, you understand different things that you would never know by just going online. And that's what we do. We go out, we hit the streets, we talk to people, we find out things. You know, sometimes we're led astray, and sometimes we're led to the right places. But your eyes, you know, deceive you sometimes, but the feeling is always there. So if you walk by a place and you can see there's so much excitement and people outside and they're talking about it and they're creating content, it's like, okay, this place is going to be something special. You know, so many benefits to local news, but you have to know your city the same way you know yourself, for sure.
I just wanted to add quickly to what Carly was mentioning about the community of creators and supporting each other, and that's actually one of the things that I really appreciate about Newsbreak. You know, you have the forum where content creators can actually share ideas together or figure things out, you know, and then also the fact that we can email you guys, like that is invaluable. Like there are no other platforms that we have such direct access, you know, just for any problems that we might be having or feedback that we need. So like I wanted to add that like that's really important part of our support network. Thanks to you guys.
Yeah. Do we want to do one more question, or should we turn it over to our virtual audience and see if they have any questions?
So let's open it up. We can start with
Oh.
our live audience.
Yeah, let's do that.
Virtual maybe.
Great. Yeah, yes, please.
Thank you for sharing your stories, and I have questions. And since you are the independent journalist, I want to know, can you share us some story? How could you find sponsorship to feed yourself? I think this is most important for the journalist. Yes.
That's a great question. I think as a creator, it's very important to understand first and foremost how to create content, right? It's important to collaborate, and obviously at some point you want to monetize, right? So being able to monetize off of your work is everything. And I speak from experience that I've had situations where I've created content and they reach out to me and say, hey, you know, we like what you're making. You know, can we have a video call? Can we further discuss, you know, your brand and how it aligns with our brand? And then you kind of compromise, and you understand that they need authentic and original and genuine content, and you can't really get that from other places. So to reiterate what I said before, creating valuable content is very important. A lot of these bigger companies, if they were to shoot one of our videos, they need like 3 or 4 cameramen, you need like two light people, right? You need 1 sound guy, you need somebody who would tell them don't walk in front of the set, right? You need somebody to write the episode, to film it, to direct it, to post-production. And so what we do is very special, it's important because it's only one or two, or, you know, in some cases three, or three, in this case, right? So these companies see this and they're like, wait, I can pay an eighth of the price, you know, and I can afford great, you know, valuable content. So just being able to understand your value, understanding what the other brands are looking for, and being able to transform yourself into something bigger than what you currently are. For example, I pitched an idea to Smorgasburg. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Smorgasburg. It's a food festival. And last year, we did a collab series with them. And basically, I pitched them an idea. They came to me and said, you know what, we like your Instagram. Can you make us some promo videos? I said, sure, I can make you a promo video, but that's gonna last in your timeline for like a week, 2 weeks, and it's gone after that. I said, you need ongoing content that's gonna bring people in, it's gonna intrigue them, give them some information, and make them feel like they learned something about you. So I pitched them a 6-part series. It was called Vendor Stories. And so each episode was about 4 minutes long. They have 3 different locations here in New York. At each location, they have about 30 different vendors. I choose 2 different vendors at that particular food festival. I go to them and I talk to them about, you know, how they got started, you know, the aspirations, and we highlight their food, and I do a quick food review, right? 2 minutes for each vendor, but each episode is like 4 minutes long. So I found a way to take short form content and long form content and combine it, and so people see it. If you guys have ever seen like the food channel, you see the one guy who goes around to the food festivals and tries the food and he sits with the guy and they show you how to make it. Like that was one of my inspirations. I was like, I've seen that a million times, I can do that, you know? So I pitched them the 6-part series, they loved it, and now they're gonna bring me on the marketing team. And that's just a way of being able to take what you're doing, align with the company's brand, and then you can just transform into something else, for sure.
Awesome.
I have a question. Hi guys, thanks for your time. Really just wonderful and refreshing. Your insights are awesome. I'm wondering, I so admire what each of you have been able to do in sort of like creating your own roles, you know, and just sort of like feeding space that you thought needed content, right? What are some tools you could suggest to us that you've been able to use to kind of differentiate your content? You know, is it using YouTube? Is it using specific hashtags, or is it really just people happening to resonate with what it is you're putting out there? What makes what you're doing different than what everyone else is doing?
I mean, for me, I can tell you, what works for me is using all social media. And then I also have a Facebook group. Besides the Facebook page, I created a Facebook group specifically for Welcome to the Bronx. And that was actually because I monitor a lot of, like, just look at the content of all the Facebook groups in the Bronx that are Bronx related. And I was a little dissatisfied with the quality because everyone was always posting memes and, you know, good morning everyone. And I'm like, that's not what I want. So I created a group where people can actually share news articles from wherever source. They can share their memories if they wanted to, or any issues. So it's a group where past and present Bronxites can get together, and that's actually also one of the places where I can get story ideas as well. So I would use, you know, like places like that are out there, like, you know, social media to help further, like, your brand, like, to differentiate yourself.
Yeah.
You know, there's definitely spaces out there.
And I would like to add, for us, it's always about having consistent style. You can, I mean, I guess our Instagram would be our most viewed platform, where we have a very consistent style in our photography. We have a very straight, linear approach into how we photograph things, and it's a hallmark. And it's been that way for many, many years. People look at us and they know that, okay, that's a James and Carla photo. They can just tell by looking at it now. And for us, that it's not something that happened overnight, but it's something that we held on to, and it's an approach that worked. And I think that sets us apart from many other different content creators that are perhaps doing similar things, especially focusing on these mom and pop stores, is that they might shoot them from an angle or from across the street or from whatever they do, but that might work for them, but for us, it's always 100%. I mean, you'll never find a non-linear photo on our feed. So it's always about being consistent in your message. And as far as hashtags, there's always talk about whether we should use hashtags or not. We do. I mean, I've changed it up over the years whether I'll use them in the content or not. I used to leave them as a comment, not in there, but I tend to find that I do, but I black it out in the caption first. It's very important for us always to have a story besides the photo. Even with the video, when we're putting up on Newsbreak, a lot of people, they don't really, I mean, writing a lengthy description is probably not gonna be helpful, but a short description, just so some people can get like the meat or the gem of what you're trying to convey out there will be helpful, because maybe they just wanna see, okay, what's this about? Should I watch it further? Even if it's a short video, I think that's helpful as well.
Okay. I mean, to touch on the hashtags part, I'd say that less is more. Don't try to create new hashtags like, oh, hashtag city girl in the city, like no one's really gonna find that, So, and what the algorithm is reading, they're reading your hashtags and understanding what type of audience they should put it in front of. So if it's city girl in the city, there's no one looking for city girl in the city, right? But if you're putting hashtags, hashtag food, hashtag Soho, hashtag Lower East Side, hashtag chicken parm, then people are, looking for these things. But to touch on content and how to better create content, I'll give you two things. I say diversify your platforms, because what may work on one platform may not work on another platform, or vice versa. You're always gonna miss 100% of shots you don't take. And I think now, the world that we live in, a lot of people are comfortable with their one platform or their two platforms. When something new comes along, they don't know how to reinvent themselves, right? So diversify your platforms, and I also say collaborate, right? Collaboration is one of the best ways to get in front of other audiences and to understand people from a different perspective. And then when people find you, they're like, oh, he's great. So if you're creating good content, then you have bingeable content. People are like watching your stuff. Sometimes I get comments on my videos. I'm like, this guy's watched like 7 videos in a row. You know what I mean? But that's what you want. You want to create good content that matters to people, and it's what they're looking for. So diversify your platforms and collaborate for sure.
We
I
also have-
second that with the diversification of platforms, because every time something comes up, I'm like, oh, another one. But that there's going to be someone there that, like there are going to be people that are going to be there that you're not going to find elsewhere.
True.
So, yeah, totally agree
Yeah,
with that.
very true. Sure.
We also have binged your videos, videos from other people. We were watching them like one by one. They're all so interesting.
Okay.
So it's couldn't stop. When you started.
Newsbreak family, so
Yes. So thank you for all the great questions. We have Christina in the back actually live streaming the event. Is there any questions from our virtual audiences?
Yes,
We
I have a couple. To start, as creators, what are your favorite methods for finding important news in your communities?
Newsbreak. Newsbreak is my only way of finding news in my community.
I would say walking constantly. I mean, in New York, it's easy to do. If you live elsewhere, I understand it's you have to have a car. No one walks around. I guess in like LA or somebody, everybody has a car there. But for us, just keep your eyes open and always have your camera ready. In this day and age, your camera phone is fine. You don't need fancy equipment. That's something James and I have said from the very, very beginning. We started out with, even when we started out with our film camera, it was not an expensive camera. We saved money and over the years bettered our equipment, but that wasn't until we became professional. When we're just starting out, it's the equipment's not important. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. They're just trying to sell you something. Use what you have. It doesn't matter even if it has a little grain. Grain can be cool. Just use what you have. Don't invest a lot. That can come later. Just always bring whatever you have. And nowadays, everyone really has their camera phone ready. Just be ready to shoot. And don't feel like, especially if you're not feeling comfortable taking a video like out in public. Don't be afraid. When you're out on the street, be respectful to people, don't, be showing their face if they're doing something that you think that they wouldn't want filmed, but smile and be approachable, and you can ask them, hey, do you mind, me filming you, but if it's a street musician or something like that, I mean, sometimes, yeah, they expect a tip, but not always. If you tell them what you're doing and just say, hey, I'd like to highlight you, I have this platform, Newsbreak or whatever, I can maybe bring you some audience, I'll show your Venmo, I'll show you ways people can donate. Would you mind if I film you for a few seconds? If you ask, I'm sure that people almost always will say yes. So don't be afraid, is the best advice I can give you, and just keep on going out there, always have your phone ready.
I agree with the walking around through the neighborhood, although I do more cycling nowadays, so when cycling through the neighborhood, you get to see more. And again, Facebook, there's a whole different generation, a big generation gap now with Facebook, but it's now basically like a bulletin board. So you have a lot of people that have hyper-local groups dedicated to neighborhoods, to streets, to blocks, to the whole borough. Monitor those groups and see what conversations are going on, what is making people tick in those neighborhoods, what is happening. Like, there's so much content that I've actually been able to pull from Facebook groups and Twitter as well, because there's always someone willing to talk about, like what's bothering them, or something that's new.
For sure.
So monitor those channels.
Definitely walk around your neighborhoods, walk around other neighborhoods. I would say, because there's so much to see in New York City, you can't see it in a week, 2 weeks, a year, 2 years. So maybe pick a particular neighborhood and then master that neighborhood and then move on. For me, for the longest time, I used to work on the Lower East Side in Soho, but I was always confused, like, where's Mulberry? Where's my street? Like, I don't know which way it is. So, but learning these neighborhoods, you learn how to navigate, and before you know, when someone asks you a question, like, oh, go straight, make a right, and you'll see like 2 ramen places, you'll see a pizza spot, but that information is so valuable because I can't tell you how many times I've met people that flown thousands of miles to come to New York City, and I ask what they did, and they say, oh, bro, I went to Olive Garden. Or, I went to Applebee's, and it's like, no shade on them, I've been there before, but it's like, come on, man. So knowing your city and being able to help people, it's gonna help them so much more than you think, for sure.
Yeah, and being from LA, like here in New York, you can walk everywhere and see so much as you're walking, because in LA, no one's on the street, like you don't really see people, you see
Right.
a lot of cars, and it feels less, you feel less connected to like the city, the streets. But
Right.
yeah, here you can see everything happening right in front of your eyes, and it's such a privilege to
Right.
be able to walk around and see everything happening, document it. So
Yeah, exactly. If you ask, you say, what's the best pizza spot on the
Yeah.
block, they're gonna tell you. And if
Yeah.
you go there and you try it, it's not good, then you know not to go there again.
yeah,
But yeah, the answers are right in front of you,
Yeah.
for sure.
The walking part of New York City, that's the beauty of New York. You have thousands of stories walking right by you.
Right.
Every
Yeah.
minute, everywhere you go, you
Yeah.
turn this way and that way, so yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Such a beautiful city. And yeah, I think we'll save all the questions for a bit later. For our virtual audiences, we actually have all their account names on our PowerPoint, so feel free to reach out to any of the creators and panelists if you have any other questions. So yeah, I just want to thank everyone again for being here today. I know we all come from many different places, and you might be a creator, you might be a journalist, you might be a writer, you might be a New York resident, but one thing we have in common is that we all bear witness, and we create the first draft of history. And maybe 50 years from now or more, people will be looking at the content you guys created, we all created together, and be like, oh, this is how it feels like to live in the year of 2023 and to live in one of the best cities in the world. And what we're doing is we're creating the most genuine, authentic time capsule to capture this moment and how it feels like to be here in the city, its beauty. The city is so beautiful, so magical, its people, and their experiences. May it be negative or positive, but we're documenting it. And the work continues, and you guys are all such an important part of it. So thank you so much. If you are interested in being part of this big family, join the Newsbreak family. We do have a QR code here, and we have little cards in your tote bag with the QR code. So If you scan it, you can join as a creator. Yeah, we'll all do this work
Then
together.
come join us, guys.
Yes.
We need your help, for sure.
Thank you again, everyone, for coming, and thank you so much to our wonderful panelists. Let's give them a round of applause. And now, if you have any questions or you want to hang out, we are gonna be serving some food and drinks in the other room. We chose food from Empanada Mama, we referenced that earlier. Actually, Ed was saying, so many businesses closed down during the pandemic, and it just is a testament to people rallying around, many of these businesses, including Empanada Mama, to, keep it going, keep it alive. So I hope you enjoy, and thank you so much for chatting with us tonight. And yeah, I hope you'll join our community. We would love to have you and your stories on Newsbreak. Thanks.
Thank you.